what happened inside his cabin shocked everyone, after a cowboy took in his neighbor's abandoned bride. The rain had been falling since late afternoon, slow at first and then harder, turning the dirt road into soft mud. The wind moved through the trees like a low whistle, and the sky stayed dark even though it was not yet night. In a small cabin at the edge of the valley, a cowboy named Ethan finished feeding his horse and closed the barn doors. He liked quiet evenings like this. No noise, no people. Just the sound of nature and the steady rhythm of a simple life. Ethan had lived alone for years. The cabin was old but strong, built by his father long ago. It stood far from town, surrounded by tall trees and open land. People in the town knew him as a man of few words. He worked hard, paid his debts, and kept to himself. Some said he was cold. Others said he was hiding from something. Ethan did not care what they thought. Silence felt safer. As he turned toward the cabin, he noticed something unusual near the road. At first, he thought it was a fallen branch or maybe a piece of cloth caught in the bushes. Then the shape moved. He stopped walking. There, standing near the broken fence, was a woman. She was soaked from the rain, her hair sticking to her face. She wore a white dress that was heavy with water and dirt at the bottom. In her hand, she held the thin fabric tightly, as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. She looked lost, tired, and frightened. Ethan's first instinct was to turn away. Trouble had a way of finding people who tried to help. He had learned that lesson long ago, but his feet would not move. Something about the woman's empty expression held him there. He slowly stepped closer, careful not to scare her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice calm but unsure. She looked up, startled as if she had not noticed him before. Her eyes were red, not just from the rain. She shook her head. "I don't know where to go," she said softly. "I was supposed to be married today." Ethan noticed then that the dress was not just white, it was a wedding dress. He did not ask questions right away. He could see she was cold, her hands trembling. He took off his jacket and held it out. "You'll catch a fever standing out here," he said. She hesitated, then accepted it. The jacket was too big for her, but it helped. She pulled it around herself and took a deep breath. "My name is Clara," she said. "I'm sorry to bother you." "You're not bothering," Ethan replied, though he was not sure that was true. "The storm's getting worse. You shouldn't be out here." She looked down the road, then back at him. "I have nowhere else." Those words struck him harder than he expected. Ethan glanced toward his cabin. One room, a small kitchen, and a fireplace. It was not meant for guests, especially not a woman in a wedding dress. The town was miles away, and the road would be hard to travel in this weather. Leaving her outside was not an option he could live with. "You can stay until the rain stops," he said at last. "Just for tonight." "Thank you. I won't be any trouble." They walked to the cabin in silence. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of wood and coffee. Ethan lit another log in the fireplace and handed Clara a towel. "Dry off," he said. "I'll make some tea." She sat near the fire, carefully removing her wet shoes. Ethan noticed how stiff her movements were, like someone who had been holding herself together for too long. As the water heated, he watched her from the corner of his eye, trying to understand how a bride ended up alone in the rain on her wedding day. When he handed her the tea, their fingers brushed by accident. She flinched slightly, then apologized. "I'm just not myself today," she said. "That's understandable," Ethan replied. After a few quiet minutes, she spoke again. "He didn't come. The groom?" She nodded. Everyone was there. The guests. The music. Even the flowers were already wilting from the heat. But he never showed up. No message. No call. Nothing. It was as if she had already used all her tears. What did you do?" Ethan asked gently. "I waited," she said. Then people started leaving. Some avoided looking at me. Others whispered. I couldn't stay there anymore. So I walked. I didn't even know where I was going. Ethan felt a familiar heaviness in his chest. He knew that feeling. The moment when life took a turn without asking permission. "You did the right thing coming in from the storm," he said. Clara looked around the cabin. "People will talk if they know I stayed here." "They already talk," Ethan said plainly. "It hasn't hurt me yet." She gave a small, sad smile. As night fell, the rain continued, tapping steadily on the roof. Ethan prepared a simple meal, and they ate in silence. There was no awkwardness, just two strangers sharing warmth and food. Still, Ethan was careful. He placed a blanket on the couch. "You can sleep here," he said. "I'll take the chair." "I don't want to take more than I already have." "It's fine," he replied. "I'm used to it." She thanked him again and lay down, still wearing the dress, as if taking it off would make everything real. Ethan sat by the window, staring out into the dark. He told himself this was temporary. When the rain stopped, she would leave. Life would return to normal, but deep down he knew normal had already changed. As the fire crackled softly, Clara whispered from the couch, "Why do you live so far away from everyone? Some people don't do well in crowds." She nodded, understanding more than he expected. That night, while the storm raged outside, 2 broken paths crossed inside a quiet cabin. Neither of them knew it yet, but this meeting would change more than just one stormy evening. Morning came slowly, as if the sky itself was tired from the long night of rain. Pale light slipped through the small window of the cabin, touching the wooden floor and the quiet furniture. The storm had passed, but the ground outside was still wet, and the air felt heavy and cool. Ethan had not slept much. He sat in the chair most of the night, listening to the wind and the soft sound of breathing from the couch. Every now and then, he glanced toward Clara to make sure she was comfortable. She slept curled under the blanket, the white dress folded awkwardly around her, now dull from dirt and rain. Seeing her like that made him think about how fragile life could be. When the sun rose higher, Clara slowly opened her eyes. For a moment she looked confused. Then the memory of the day before returned, and her face grew serious again. She sat up quietly, careful not to wake Ethan, but he was already standing near the stove, heating water. "Good morning," he said, turning slightly. "Did you sleep at all?" "Thank you for letting me stay." "You're welcome," he said simply. "I'll make breakfast." "It's nothing special." "That's more than enough," she said, offering a polite smile. They ate quietly. The cabin felt different in daylight. Dust floated in the air, and the walls showed marks from years of use. Clara noticed small details: a cracked mug, a shelf filled with old books, a photo of a younger Ethan standing beside an older man. "Your father?" she asked softly, pointing. "Yes," Ethan replied. "He built this place." "It feels safe here," she said after a pause. Ethan did not answer right away. He had never thought of the cabin as safe, only quiet. Still, her words stayed with him. After breakfast, Clara stood and smoothed her dress. "I should go," she said. "I don't want to cause problems for you." Ethan looked outside. The sky was clearer, but the road was still muddy. "The road's bad, and town's far. You can stay another day if you want." She hesitated. "People will talk. They always do," he said again. "What matters is that you're okay." She stepped outside for fresh air, breathing deeply. The land stretched wide and open with no houses nearby. It felt lonely, but also peaceful. Later that morning, she offered to help. Ethan tried to refuse, but she insisted. She cleaned the small kitchen and swept the floor. While working, she asked careful questions about the ranch, the land, and his daily routine. Ethan answered briefly, but he did not shut her out. As the day went on, Clara seemed lighter, as if movement gave her some control again. Still, there were moments when her hands would pause, and her eyes would grow distant. Around noon, a truck passed on the distant road. Clara froze. Ethan noticed. "What's wrong?" But her voice was tight. Later, as they sat outside, she finally spoke. "I don't think he meant to disappear," she said. "The groom?" Ethan asked. "Yes. Something felt wrong that morning. He was nervous. Kept checking his phone. I thought it was wedding stress, but now..." Her voice faded. "Did he say anything?" Ethan asked. "No, but he promised he'd come." Ethan studied her face. He could tell she was not just heartbroken. She was confused. That afternoon, a neighbor stopped by. A man named Robert, who lived a mile away, rode up on his horse. When he saw Clara, his eyes widened. "Well, this is unexpected," Robert said with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. Ethan stepped forward. "She's staying until the road clears." Robert glanced at Clara's dress. "People in town are saying things." "I'm not in town," Ethan replied. Robert shrugged. "Just thought you should know. Folks are curious about what's going on in this cabin." After Robert left, the silence felt heavier. "I should leave," Clara said again. "I don't want your life disturbed because of me." Ethan shook his head. "My life's already quiet. Too quiet, maybe." That evening, as the sun dipped low, Clara finally changed out of the dress. Ethan lent her an old shirt of his and a pair of trousers that were too long. She rolled them up and laughed softly for the first time. "I must look ridiculous," she said. "You look human," Ethan replied. They shared a simple meal. As darkness fell, Clara spoke again, this time more openly. They were angry when I left the wedding. They think I embarrassed them. That's not fair, Ethan said. Life rarely is, she replied. She then asked him something unexpected. Why do you really live out here? Ethan stared into the fire. Because trusting people once cost me everything. He did not explain further, but Clara understood enough to stop asking. That night, the cabin felt less like a shelter and more like a shared space. Still, outside, rumors were already growing, carried by curious voices and unanswered questions. And somewhere beyond the valley, a truth waited to be uncovered, one that would soon reach the quiet cabin and change everything again. The next morning began with an uneasy feeling that neither of them could explain. The sky was clear, birds moved through the trees, and the land looked calm, yet something felt unsettled. Clara woke early and stepped outside, wrapping Ethan's jacket tightly around herself. She stood near the fence, staring at the long road as if expecting someone to appear. Ethan noticed her from the doorway, but did not interrupt. He had learned long ago that some thoughts needed space. After breakfast, Ethan saddled his horse to check the far end of the land. Before leaving, he paused. You'll be okay here for a bit? Clara nodded. I'll clean up and stay close. As he rode away, Clara returned inside the cabin. For the first time since arriving, she allowed herself to truly look around, not just at the furniture, but at the small details people usually hide. Drawers, shelves, boxes stacked neatly in corners. She did not mean to be curious, but the quiet invited it. While sweeping near the old desk, she accidentally knocked over a small wooden box. Papers spilled out across the floor. She bent down quickly, embarrassed, ready to put them back. Then she noticed the writing. They were letters. Old ones. The handwriting was careful and faded, written by someone who had taken their time. She picked one up and read only the first line. Her breath caught. The letter spoke of trust, of a promise broken, of someone leaving suddenly and never returning. Clara stopped reading. She did not want to invade Ethan's privacy, but the words felt painfully familiar. She carefully placed the letters back into the box and returned it where it had been. Still, the feeling stayed with her. Whatever had pushed Ethan into solitude had not been a small thing. Later that day, Ethan returned, his expression serious. Someone came by town, he said quietly. They were asking questions. About me? Yes, he replied. And about the groom. She sat down slowly. Did they find him? Ethan shook his head. No, but people are starting to worry, and some are starting to accuse. Accuse who? She asked. You, he said honestly. Her face went pale. I didn't do anything wrong. I know, Ethan said firmly, but rumors don't need truth to grow. That afternoon, Clara finally gathered the courage to say what had been weighing on her. Ethan, there's something strange. The morning of the wedding, he asked me to wait for him before the ceremony. He said if anything happened, I should trust no one except him. That doesn't sound right, Ethan said. I thought it was nerves, she continued, but now I wonder if he was afraid. But he was hiding something. I could feel it. As the sun lowered, a knock came at the door. Both of them froze. Ethan opened it slowly. A man stood outside wearing a plain coat, his face serious but calm. I'm looking for Clara, the man said. My name is Thomas. I work with the local authorities. Clara stepped forward, her hands shaking. That's me. We just want to ask a few questions, Thomas said. May I come in? Ethan nodded but stayed close. Inside, Thomas explained that the groom had been involved in a dispute weeks before the wedding. Money was missing, and some people believed he had run away. Others feared something worse. Did he tell you anything about problems? Thomas asked Clara. She hesitated, then spoke honestly. Only that he was under pressure and afraid. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. That helps. Before leaving, Thomas looked at Ethan. People are watching this place closely. You should be careful. After he left, silence filled the cabin again. I never wanted this, Clara whispered. I didn't ask to be part of something dark. Ethan looked at her steadily. Sometimes trouble finds us anyway. She sat near the fire, staring into the flames. Ethan joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. I read one of your letters by accident, she admitted quietly. I'm sorry. Instead, he sighed. Then you know why I live alone. Yes, he replied, and blamed for it. They sat together, not speaking, understanding more than words could explain. Outside, the wind moved through the trees again. Not like a storm, but like a warning. The truth was getting closer, and when it arrived, it would not be gentle. The next day began with heavy silence. No birds sang near the cabin, and even the wind seemed careful as it moved through the trees. Clara woke with a tight feeling in her chest. The words from the night before stayed in her mind. Trouble was no longer far away. It was already at the door. Ethan was outside early, fixing a loose fence post. He worked slowly, his eyes often drifting toward the road. Clara joined him, carrying 2 cups of warm coffee. They stood together without speaking, watching the morning light spread across the land. "I don't like this," Clara said finally. "Everything feels like it's closing in." Ethan nodded. "People fear what they don't understand, and they talk when they're afraid." As if his words had called it into existence, dust rose on the road in the distance. A car appeared, then another behind it. They slowed as they neared the cabin. Clara's heart began to race. "They're coming here." Ethan set his tools down calmly. "Stay close to me." 3 people stepped out. Thomas was one of them. With him was a woman holding a notebook and a man Clara recognized from town. His face was tight with judgment. "We need to look inside the cabin," the woman said firmly. "There have been reports." "Reports of what?" Ethan asked. "Suspicious activity," she replied. "And possible involvement in the groom's disappearance." "That's not true." Thomas raised his hand slightly. "Let's all stay calm. You can look. There's nothing to hide." They entered one by one. The woman took notes, opening drawers and cabinets. The man from town looked around with clear disappointment, as if he wanted to find something wrong. Then the woman paused near the old desk. "What's this?" she asked, holding up the wooden box. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Personal letters." She opened the box and scanned the contents. Her expression changed. "These, letters mention money disputes?" she said slowly. "And a man who vanished." Claire stepped forward. "Those letters are old. They're not about this situation." "How do you know?" the man from town asked sharply. "Because I read one by mistake," Clara said honestly. "They describe a different time, a different loss." Thomas took the letters gently and looked through them. "These are from years ago," he said. "They don't match the current case." The woman nodded, but her eyes remained cautious. Just then, a sound came from outside. A truck pulled up quickly, stopping close to the fence. Another man stepped out, breathing hard. "I found something," he said urgently. "Down by the river trail." "What did you find?" Thomas asked. "A bag," the man replied. "Belongs to the groom." Inside were documents. And a phone. Clara felt her legs weaken. Ethan reached out, steadying her. "What kind of documents?" the woman asked. "Agreements," the man said. "Debts. Names of people who wanted their money back." Silence fell. Thomas turned to Clara gently. "Your groom wasn't just nervous. He was in trouble." They all followed the man to the truck. Clara sat inside, staring at the phone now resting on the seat between them. It was scratched and dusty, but still intact. "May I?" she asked. Thomas nodded. Her hands trembled as she turned it on. A message appeared on the screen. "Unfinished and never sent. I'm sorry. I can't bring you into this. I thought I could fix it alone." Tears filled Clara's eyes. "He didn't leave me because he didn't care," she whispered. "Why, he left to protect me." The woman looked thoughtful, or because he was scared. As they drove back to the cabin, the man from town avoided looking at Clara. His certainty had faded. That evening, more people arrived. Word traveled fast. Neighbors stood at a distance, watching, whispering. For the first time, Clara did not feel small under their eyes. The truth was beginning to stand beside her. Inside the cabin, Thomas spoke quietly to Ethan. "You did the right thing letting her stay." Ethan nodded. "I know what it's like to be blamed without proof." Thomas hesitated. "Your past, we may need to reopen it. Those letters suggest someone framed you back then." Ethan's breath caught. "After all this time?" "Truth has a way of waiting," Thomas said. Later that night, the cabin was quiet again, but it felt different. The air was lighter, though questions still lingered. Clara sat by the fire, holding the phone carefully. "I wish he had trusted me enough to stay," she said softly. Ethan sat across from her. "Fear makes people run. Love makes them try to protect." She looked at him. He stayed. Someone had to. Outside, the town watched and waited. Inside the cabin, 2 lives stood at the edge of answers that would soon change how everyone saw them. The walls that once held silence now held truth, and it was only a matter of time before it reached everyone. The morning light felt different when it entered the cabin. It was softer, warmer, as if the land itself had decided to rest after days of tension. Clara woke early, not because of fear this time, but because her mind was finally quiet. For the first time since the wedding day, she felt like she could breathe. She stepped outside and saw Ethan near the barn, brushing his horse. He looked calm, but she could tell he'd been awake for a long time. Some nights leave marks, even when they pass. "Good morning," she said. He turned and nodded. "Morning." They stood together, watching the mist lift slowly from the ground. "Thomas will come back today," Ethan said. "They're close to finding the full truth." Clara nodded. "I'm ready." This time it was only Thomas. His expression was serious, but there was relief in his eyes. "They found him," he said gently. "Alive?" "Yes," Thomas replied. "Weak, but alive." "Where was he?" "Hidden in an old storage building near the edge of the county," Thomas explained. "He was trying to sort things out alone. The debts were real. Some people were pressuring him. He believed disappearing was the only way to keep you safe." Clara closed her eyes. "He should have trusted me," Thomas nodded. "He said the same thing when we found him." "There's more," Thomas continued. "Someone else was involved. Someone who wanted him to take the blame for missing money. That person spread rumors. About you, and about this cabin." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That case from your past," Thomas added, turning to him. "It's connected. Same pattern, same person." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he exhaled slowly. "So I wasn't wrong." "No," Thomas said. "You were never wrong." The weight Ethan had carried for years seemed to lift, just a little. That afternoon, Clara asked to see the groom. Not to argue, not to blame. Just to understand. They met in a quiet room in town. He looked thinner, older somehow, but his eyes filled with tears when he saw her. "I'm sorry," he said. "I thought I was protecting you." "I didn't need protection," Clara replied calmly. "I needed honesty." He nodded, ashamed. "I know that now." No anger. Just two people accepting that love alone was not enough to fix fear. When Clara returned to the cabin that evening, she felt lighter. Some endings don't come with joy, but they bring peace. A few days later, the truth spread through town. Slowly at first, then all at once. Whispers turned into apologies. Eyes that once judged now looked away in shame. People spoke differently about the cabin, too. Not as a place of secrets, but as a place where truth waited quietly. One afternoon, Clara stood at the doorway holding a small bag. "I think it's time for me to go," she said softly. Ethan nodded, though his chest tightened. "You should do what feels right." She hesitated. "I don't know where I'll go yet, but I know who I am now." He smiled slightly. "That's a good place to start." She stepped closer. "Thank you for everything. You gave me shelter when I had nothing. You gave me something too," he said. "You reminded me that silence isn't always safety." They stood there for a moment longer. Then she walked toward the road. Halfway there, she stopped and turned back. "Ethan?" "Yes?" "This cabin, it saved me." He nodded. "It saved me too." She left with steady steps, not looking back this time. Weeks passed. Life slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Ethan worked the land, but the quiet felt different now. It no longer felt empty. One evening, a letter arrived. It was from Clara. She wrote about a small town near the river where she planned to start fresh. She wrote about learning to trust herself again. And at the end, she wrote, "Some places change you forever. Not because of what happens inside them, but because of who stands beside you when the world is loud." Ethan folded the letter carefully and placed it in the wooden box, not as a memory of pain, but as proof that some storms leave good things behind. The cabin stood quietly under the open sky, no longer a place of rumors, but a place where two broken paths once crossed and found light.